Hello there, I am Lady Loy on Gold Standard Radio. You'll find me every Saturday, 7 till 9, on the Roller Coaster Show. Gold Standard Radio, that's www.gold-standard-radio.com. And today I want to talk about the petition that landed in my inbox that was asking for the UK to get rid of the visa restrictions for Jamaicans who want to visit the UK, because when people in the UK visit Jamaica, there are no visa restrictions. So I thought I would share my thoughts with you. When I talk about topics that involve immigration and visas, I start where it really matters. I start with the relationship between the UK and the communities I care about. The ties that have been built over decades, sometimes centuries. I think about the connection between sound systems and cities, between music and migration, between artists and audiences who grew together while borders became more complicated. Britain's music culture didn't grow in isolation. It was built through movement, people moving, sounds moving, ideas moving, carried in suitcases, vinyl crates, USB sticks, and now hard drives and laptops. That movement is the lifeblood of our culture. And this is where immigration stories land differently for creative people. Because when rules tighten, when doors narrow, when permission becomes harder to get, it doesn't just affect paperwork. It affects tours that never happen, collaboration that stays digital, festivals that show that lose the people who would have brought them alive, elders of the culture who are celebrated in name but can't physically be present, younger artists who grew up thinking the UK scene was home, only to discover that home now requires approval. For DJs, musicians and creatives with a connection to Britain, travel isn't just logistics. It's cultural maintenance. It's returning to the places where the music was shaped, where scenes were born, where audiences know the language of the sound without explanation. When access is denied, culture fragments, not loudly, quietly, one cancelled visit at a time, one missed set at a time, one maybe next year that never arrives. And what makes this emotionally charged is history, because so many of the sounds we now call British were carried here by Jamaicans who were once welcomed, encouraged, even needed. And yet today, the same communities that built it face barriers to entry. That's the painful question this petition raises. How can the culture be celebrated while the people who carry it are restricted? When I first saw this petition calling for visa-free travel for Jamaicans visiting the UK, I knew it just wasn't another piece of news. I had to sit with it because on the surface, it might read like policy or paperwork, something distant from the booth, the studio and the dance floor. But for musicians, artists, selectors, promoters and DJs, especially those of us whose roots stretch between Jamaica and Britain, this story is never abstract. It reaches straight into our creative lives, into movement, into access, into whether our art can travel with us or has to stay behind. So when I talk about this petition, I start where people actually live. I start with the relationship, the movement between UK and Jamaica. And today, for so many, those movements are slowed by visa rules that feel inconsistent and unfair. I don't speak in blame, I speak in impact. I think about the DJ invited to play a one-night set who can't justify the cost or risk of a visa application. The musician who wants to perform at a tribute event honouring Windrush pioneers but can't guarantee entry. The artist whose connection to the UK exists not through charts or contracts, but through decades of shared cultural exchange. That's the human story behind this petition. It sits in interrupted journeys, in quiet exclusions. Many artists don't speak openly about these barriers: pride, fatigue, fear of being labelled difficult. So the system appears to work fine, but in reality, the cost is absorbed privately. And that's why I feel compelled to talk about it, to give that silence a voice, to hold the news steady in one hand and lived experience in the other. To remind listeners that scenes survive on exchange, not isolation. Music has always crossed borders faster than policy ever could. And when borders harden, it's creativity that pays the price first. I know there's no easy fixes. Governments think in terms of control and risk. Culture moves differently. It moves through relationships, trust and presence. And when those things are disrupted, the loss shows up years later. In thinner scenes, less connected networks, missed collaborations and dreams deferred. This conversation forces the UK to look at itself, to ask whether fairness can really be one-sided. To ask whether shared history only matters when it's convenient. To ask whether family unity is something we value in principle but limit in practice. These are not easy questions. They don't fit neatly into sound bites, but they matter. And maybe that's where the real work of this petition lies, not in instant change, but in sustained remembrance. In refusing to let bureaucracy erase humanity, in reminding a nation that policies are not neutral when they touch real lives, that every rule has a human cost even when it's written in legal language. For the families affected, hope doesn't come from promises, it comes from being seen, from having their experience acknowledged, their music played without being dismissed as sentimental, from knowing that their pain is understood as part of the ongoing story of this country, not a footnote to it. This petition may not reopen the door tomorrow, but does something quieter and just as important. It keeps the conversation alive. It insists that connections matter. It says that history didn't end in 1948 or 1962 or 2003. It's still unfolding in living rooms, in phone calls across those time zones, in longings that don't show up in policy papers. And perhaps the most honest thing we can say right now is change may be slow, but memory is stubborn. Families remember, communities remember, and as long as people keep telling these stories, the question will keep returning gently but persistently to the heart of the nation. Why is the door closed? And what would it take to open it again? So when I share this story, I'm translating it into lived experiences. I'm asking listeners, especially those who feel untouched by visa rules, to consider how much of what they love was built by people who once crossed borders with fewer questions asked. I'm inviting reflection, not outrage, awareness, not panic. And I leave space for hope that naming impact is not the same as demanding instant change. That remembering shared history, the Windrush generation, the culture, the music, the families, is in itself an act of resistance. Even when policies feel immovable, stories still travel, and they shape how future decisions are understood. And as I always like to leave it with you, this isn't about outrage, it's about understanding. Culture grows through connection, not division. Though visa rules shift and borders tighten, the human impact lingers long after. Wherever you're listening from, whatever side of the stage or country you stand on, take a moment to think of the families behind these stories, the artists, the families, the communities, whose lives are shaped by choices they rarely control, but whose contributions keep shaping the world we share. This is Lady Loy, keeping it real with you. And I do hope it resonates with a lot of you, because sometimes we don't make that connection with what we see in the news, visa applications. We kind of distance ourselves and we don't realise the long-term and implicit influence and impact. So I'm going to leave it there with you, and you take care now. If you can, log in to me on Lovers Rock Radio 7 till 9 on Fridays, or Gold Standard Radio 7 till 9 on Saturdays. And that's all for now. Take care now. Bye-bye.